America's top Arab allies, the UAE and Saudi Arabia. Originally, the Board of Peace was meant to oversee reconstruction in Gaza, but its charter does not limit its role to the Gaza Strip, appearing to want to rival the United Nations. The British government approves plans for a contentious mega Chinese embassy in London. It will be the largest embassy complex in the UK by area. There has been fierce domestic opposition to this project, but the nod comes as the Keir Starmer government looks to reset ties with Beijing. Uganda's army chief says he wants opposition leader Bobi Wine dead. The military leader is the son of President Yoweri Museveni. The comment comes days after President Museveni won a seventh term in office. Bobi Wine claims he has been forced into hiding after the poll results. Last year, the general had threatened to behead Wine. And global tourism hit a new record level in 2025. There were more than 1.5 billion international tourist arrivals worldwide. Africa led the surge with an 8% rise. It was followed by the Asia-Pacific region, where international arrivals grew by 6%. It's been exactly 1 year since Donald Trump took office. He was inaugurated on this day in 2025, January 20th. Everyone knew it was going to be chaotic. After all, this was an experienced and vengeful Trump. He wouldn't spare anyone, not allies, not adversaries. But I'm sure no one expected this level of drama. 1 year into his presidency, the most pressing issue is not Ukraine or Iran, it is Greenland. Trump is adamant about taking over this island. He wants Europe and Denmark to serve it on a platter. And if they don't, Trump is threatening tariffs starting in February. At first, Europe criticized this move, but now they want talks. They are trying to reason with the US president. First, the NATO chief reached out. He sent a message to Donald Trump, a message that Trump leaked on social media. Listen to this. Dear Donald, I will use my media engagements in Davos to highlight your work in Syria, in Gaza, and in Ukraine. I am committed to finding a way forward in Greenland. Can't wait to see you. Trump released it, a private message. This is diplomacy in Trump's world. Leaders do not call or exchange letters. They shoot direct messages on their phones. And the language? This is flattery on steroids. In this case, Trump agreed to a meeting. He will attend the World Economic Forum at Davos tomorrow, and while there, he will meet European leaders. It's a chance for them to sway Trump. Another meeting was pitched by French President Emmanuel Macron, again on text. Macron sent a text to Trump, and Trump posted this message as well. Here's what it says. We are totally in line on Syria. We can do great things on Iran. I do not understand what you're doing on Greenland. I can set up a G7 meeting in Paris on Thursday. Let us have dinner together in Paris before you go back to the US. That's Macron's message to Donald Trump. It's not clear if Trump has accepted this invite. If he has, brace for an awkward meeting, because yesterday, Donald Trump unloaded on Macron. The French president has refused to join his Gaza Board of Peace, and Trump did not take it well.
Nobody wants him because he's going to be out of office very soon. So, that's all right. What I'll do is, if they feel like Costo, I'll put a 200% tariff on his wines and champagnes, and he'll join. But he doesn't have to join. If he said that, you're probably giving it to me a little bit differently. But if he actually did say that, but as you know, he's going to be out of office in a few months.
A dinner after that, we say good luck to Macron. Either way, the Europeans are making a last-ditch effort. They're trying to rein in Donald Trump. The question is, will it work? All indications are that it won't. Trump has posted 2 AI images on his social media. The first one shows Canada as part of the United States. The other one shows him planting the US flag in Greenland. So Trump is not backing down. Yesterday, he reiterated his earlier message that America must have Greenland.
We have to have it. They have to have this done. They can't protect it. Denmark, they're wonderful people. And I know the leaders are very good people, but they don't even go there. And, you know, because the boat went there 500 years ago and then left, that doesn't give you title to property.
He's introduced a new angle to his claim. At first, Trump was asking Denmark to give up Greenland, meaning he acknowledged Danish rights over this island. But now he's questioning those very same Danish rights. We saw that in a message that he wrote to Norway's Prime Minister. Listen to what Trump said. Why does Denmark have a right of ownership anyway? There are no written documents. It's only that a boat landed there hundreds of years ago, but we had boats landing there also. Clearly, Trump is building a case. He's questioning Denmark's rights over Greenland. The problem is that's none of his business. Greenland's Prime Minister has rejected Trump's moves. Greenland's people have rejected him. Denmark has rejected him. So the diplomatic option is off the table. Europe will not offer Greenland willingly, which leaves the other option, coercion. Will Trump use American military force to capture Greenland? He was asked this question yesterday. And what was his response? No comment. It was not a no, meaning military options could still be on the table. Trump says Europe should focus on the war in Ukraine. They should not be focusing on Greenland. So military coercion is very much possible. The other option is economic coercion. Trump has threatened to impose 10% tariffs on 8 European countries. Many of them are weighing a strong response, but the US Treasury Secretary has warned against it. He wants Europe to let things play out.
We are not going to outsource our hemispheric security to anyone else.
Not the Europeans, this question.
I think it would be very unwise.
Plunging us into a downward spiral would only aid the very adversaries we are both so committed to keeping out of the strategic landscape. So our response will be unflinching, united and proportional. And this is why we are working on a package to support Arctic security. First principle, full solidarity with Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark. The sovereignty and integrity of their territory is non-negotiable.
So all eyes are on Davos. Though frankly, don't get your hopes up. Trump has gone too far to give up on Greenland, and Europe cannot be seen as surrendering their territory. It's a perfect stalemate that raises the risks of a military attack. And the worst part? There is nothing to stop them. Yes, the attack would fracture and probably end NATO, but as an operation, it has no risk. The Danes are not about to fight the US military, so Greenland is basically a sitting duck. Let's see if diplomacy can bring things back from the brink.
Новым годом. Спасибо большое.
What must it feel like to be Vladimir Putin right now? He has spent years attacking NATO, he has slammed the Western alliance, he has tried and failed to split Europe from the United States, and suddenly he doesn't have to do it anymore because America is doing it for him. Donald Trump wants Greenland. He wants access to the Arctic. He says it is to prevent Russia and China from taking over the region. You would expect Moscow to push back. After all, the Arctic is one of Russia's most strategic regions. But not this time. This time, Russia is smiling away. In fact, they're encouraging this bid of Donald Trump. Look at what Russia's state-run media is saying. They're praising Trump. They're openly attacking Greenland. And they're mocking European unity. Trump is being portrayed as a historic leader. Here's how one newspaper put it. If Trump gets Greenland, he would be remembered alongside Abraham Lincoln. Basically, Trump would go into history books as one of the greatest American presidents. That's what the Russians are saying. They're rooting for Trump to annex European territory. And it's not just their media, not just the Russian media. Their ministers are also at it. Look at what Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, has said. He said Greenland was not a natural part of Denmark. He called it a problem of former colonial territories. Listen to this.
In principle, Greenland is not a natural part of Denmark, is it? It was neither a natural part of Norway, nor a natural part of Denmark. It is a colonial conquest. The fact that the inhabitants are now accustomed to it and feel comfortable is another matter. But the problem of former colonial possessions is getting more and more serious.
So why is Moscow doing this? Why is it in favor of the US planting itself in the Arctic? Well, Russia is looking at the bigger prize here. For them, this is not about the Arctic. This is about NATO. This is about the Western military alliance cracking from the inside. Because if Trump takes Greenland, it won't just be a land grab, it would be the end of NATO, and no one would want that more than Russia. Moscow would love to watch the NATO unravel without firing a single shot.
The thing is that Greenland is part of NATO, and this alliance is now going through a period of challenges showing what NATO is. This is why we are not interested at all in interfering in somebody's affairs.
So if the US takes Greenland, on what grounds will it lecture Russia? What will it say in Ukraine's defense? What moral high ground will it stand on after doing the exact same thing for which it wants to punish Russia? That should explain why Moscow is cheering this. Meanwhile, Europe is losing sleep. And it was quite evident from this statement by the European Commission chief.
Of course, nostalgia is part of our human story, but nostalgia will not bring back the old order. And playing for time and hoping for things to revert soon will not fix the structural dependencies we have. So my point is, if this change is permanent, then Europe must change permanently too. It is time to seize this opportunity and build a new independent Europe.
That was European Union Chief Ursula von der Leyen. She says the time for nostalgia is over. The need of the hour is a new Europe, a new and independent Europe.
That geopolitical shocks can and must serve as an opportunity for Europe. And in my view, the seismic change we are going through today is an opportunity, in fact, a necessity, to build a new form of European independence. And this need is neither new nor a reaction to recent events.
You see, Europe has built its prosperity by outsourcing everything. They outsourced their security to the US under the protective umbrella of the NATO. They got their energy from Russia. Cheap gas still flows into Europe through pipelines. And they outsourced their factories to China, which kept European shelves full and prices low. It all worked until it did not. War returned to Europe's doorstep, energy became a weapon, and supply chains snapped under pressure. So as Ursula von der Leyen says, Europe's old world is gone. Today, Europe must do three things, all at the same time: defend itself, power itself, and compete for itself. And to do that, Europe needs reliable, trusted partners. Perhaps this is where India enters the picture.
Right after Davos, the next weekend, I will travel to India. There's still work to do, but we are on the cusp of a historic trade agreement. Indeed, some call it the mother of all deals.
You heard that. She calls it the mother of all deals. India and the EU are all set to sign a mega deal, a deal that would create a market of nearly 2 billion people. And that's one way to do this, to diversify your relations, to build allies across the world, to find geopolitical partners without any strings attached. So the EU chief's warning was not just about geopolitics, it was about the mindset. The era of outsourcing hard choices is over. Europe can no longer live off the assumptions of the past. It must relearn how to stand on its own.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Well, shifting focus to some breaking news that's coming in. The European Union Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is going to be in India next week for the Republic Day celebrations here. And ahead of that visit, she has gone on to say that the EU will strike mother of all deals with India next week. Also adding that Europe will always choose the world and the world is ready to choose Europe. Zaka Jacob, my colleague, now joins us, getting us more details on this. But before that, let's listen in to what Ursula von der Leyen had to say.
Of 2 billion people, accounting for almost a quarter of global GDP. And crucially, that would provide a first-mover advantage for Europe with one of the world's fastest-growing and most dynamic continents. Europe wants to do business with the growth centers of today and the economic powerhouses of this century, from Latin America to the Indo-Pacific and far beyond. Europe will always choose the world, and the world is ready to choose Europe.
Zaka now joins us, getting us more perspective on this. Zaka, as far as the mother of all deals is concerned, any insight into what's that going to look like?
So it's the India-EU FTA. They've been negotiating this for over 10 years now. It started in 2013, and then in 2022, they got suspended because clearly there were issues in the negotiations between India and the European Union. The sticking point still seems to be around the carbon-adjusted border mechanism, whereby if you are exporting to any country within the European Union, the 27-member bloc, you have to pay a sort of a tariff, if you will. Some are calling it a non-tariff barrier, whereby it sort of mitigates some of the carbon footprint, whether it is auto companies, whether it's other companies. But I think the larger context in which Ursula has made these comments are absolutely important, because it's happening in Davos. She's speaking, just a day before Donald Trump speaks there. She's also signaling to Trump at a time when relations between Brussels and Washington is deeply frayed because of the Greenland controversy. She's signaling to Trump that, look, we have other business partners equally big, in fact, bigger than the United States in terms of a market that we're willing to do business with, and they are willing to do business with us as well. For India, too, this is important, the India-EU FTA, simply because the India-US bilateral trade agreement has still not been arrived at. India still continues to pay 50% tariffs, which is one of the highest for any country in the world. So India will also be very, very keen to wrap up and conclude the FTA next week.
The Trump imperialism train does not stop at Greenland. It has a new stop in the Indian Ocean, another landmass that Trump wants to control. It's called the Chagos Islands. And this is not just another flashpoint. This is a flashpoint that threatens America's relationship with its most important partner, the United Kingdom. First, let me pull up the map. The Chagos is a set of 60 islands. They are located in the central Indian Ocean. For decades, Mauritius had claimed these islands, but Britain controlled them. In 1814, Chagos and Mauritius had become British colonies. In the 1960s, Mauritius became independent, but Britain held on to Chagos. That's because of a crucial military base. This base is located on the largest island in the Chagos, an island called Diego Garcia. This island is home to a joint US-UK military base. It gave the Americans a crucial presence in the Indian Ocean, but the pressure from Mauritius was too much. They wanted their land back. In 2024, the UK agreed to give up the Chagos Islands, and in 2025, a formal deal was signed. Back then, the US actually supported the agreement. Look at this statement from May 2025. The US, under President Donald Trump, welcomed the UK-Mauritius agreement. They said it would secure the long-term operation of the Diego Garcia base. But cut to 2026, and Trump has made a U-turn. He has blasted the UK for its decision to give back the island. Look at his message. I'm quoting from Donald Trump. Shockingly, our brilliant NATO ally, the United Kingdom, is currently planning to give away the island of Diego Garcia for no reason whatsoever. There is no doubt that China and Russia have noticed this act of total weakness. The UK giving away extremely important land is an act of great stupidity. There's a lot to unpack here. We'll go one by one. First of all, the UK is not giving up Diego Garcia for no reason. That's how Trump has put it. They're giving it away for no reason. That is not correct. For starters, an international court has ruled in favor of Mauritius, so the UK is legally required to give it up. Secondly, this is 2026. Colonialism and conquest are not valid arguments. The Chagos Islands are located almost 10,000 kilometers from the UK. There is no basis for London to hold on to them. And third, it's not some huge sacrifice. The deal includes a 99-year lease on Diego Garcia. The UK will pay $130 million per year. In return, they get to use the military base on the island. So the UK government says it's a pretty good deal.
I don't think Britain should be embarrassed or humiliated at all, quite frankly. Diego Garcia, which is a small island that was part of the British Empire, was having its sovereignty challenged by the Mauritian government. We've secured that island as a military base for the next 100 years because it is an important military base for the UK and for our NATO allies, including the United States.
Now, this raises a few questions. One, why is Diego Garcia so important? And two, why is Trump making a U-turn on this matter? The answer to the first question is location. Chagos is crucial because it's a crucial midpoint in the Indian Ocean between Southeast Asia, West Asia, and the African coast. It gives the Americans an important launch pad. They used Diego Garcia to bomb Iraq and Afghanistan in the 2000s. Even last year, the Americans stationed bombers and cargo planes on this island. This was in the middle of tensions with Iran. So strategically, Diego Garcia is very important. But like I said, the US is not losing this base. They have a 99-year lease to keep using it. Which brings us to the next question. Why is Trump making a U-turn? The US president is tying it to Greenland. Again, let me quote him. The UK giving away extremely important land is an act of great stupidity and is another in a very long line of national security reasons why Greenland has to be acquired. Someone get him an atlas. Greenland sits between the Arctic and Atlantic Ocean. Diego Garcia is located in the Indian Ocean. How can these two issues be linked? Logic says they can't. But it's a convenient excuse to target the UK. Their Prime Minister Keir Starmer has opposed Trump's Greenland bid, so maybe Trump is just getting back at him. Because he's not the only one opposing this deal. The UK's opposition parties have also questioned the Chagos agreement, so Trump is basically giving them more ammunition. Well, whatever the reason, it's unacceptable. Courts, precedent, and common sense are all on the side of Chagos Islands. Yet Trump is openly against it. It confirms what Trump himself admitted earlier this month, that international law cannot limit him. Only his own morals can stop him. That's what Trump said. Only his own morals can stop him. And where can you find Trump's morals? Probably in the depths of the Caribbean Sea or the Arctic Ocean or now the Indian Ocean.
Tariff, I love tariff. I can make anybody do anything through the use of tariffs.
Clearly, Trump's focus has shifted from Iran to Europe. Europe's leading economies are bracing for his tariff attack, but the real impact is showing in America, at the checkout counters and on grocery bills. Because it's Americans who are paying the price of Trump's tariffs. A German think tank has crunched the data and the numbers speak for themselves. Businesses did not cut prices in response to US tariffs. They just passed on the added cost. And who did they pass it on to? Well, to American companies, the ones that imported their products, and by extension, to American consumers who are buying their products. So they are the ones footing the final bill, the Americans. For every dollar collected through tariffs, American consumers paid 96 cents, and businesses paid just 4 cents. In other words, Trump's tariffs are draining money from Americans and sending it to the US Treasury. So the US government is getting richer, but US citizens are suffering. Also, this is exactly what experts said would happen. Because tariffs are like a hidden tax. Yes, the importers pay the extra tax, but then they have to make a decision. Do they absorb the cost and reduce their earnings, or do they raise the prices and put that tax burden on consumers? Turns out most businesses in the US are passing on the burden. Of course, Trump does not agree. Last week, he declared victory on inflation.
Under our administration, growth is exploding, productivity is soaring, investment is booming, incomes are rising, inflation is defeated, America is respected again like never before.
Inflation has been defeated. That is what Trump said. But the facts are fighting back. Shoppers are paying more for essentials like coffee. The price of coffee in the US is up by nearly 20% compared to last year. The price of lettuce is up by a little over 7%. Frozen fish up by 8%. And beef over 16%. Overall, groceries have become more expensive in America. Their prices have increased by almost 3% over the past year. That's the average. Tariffs are pushing up farming costs too. Stuff like fertilizers, seeds and fuel, all of them cost more now. Trump's tariffs have hit metals like aluminium as well, and this affects the prices of cans, your frozen food boxes, bottles and drinks, sodas, juices. And why does this matter? How does the rise in price of cans or seeds impact the consumer? It does because this is what businesses call input costs. That's the cost of raw materials, the stuff that goes into the making of a finished product, like aluminium for cans or seeds and fertilizers for farming. These costs all add up to determine the final cost of a product, and it shows up in your bill. Also, this could be just the beginning. Until August last year, only 37% of the tariff cost was passed on to consumers because businesses were slow in passing on the extra cost. They were coming to terms with Trump's trade policies. They were waiting to see when and how his flip-flops would stop, if they stop at all. But it seems the tariffs are here to stay. So business strategy is being adapted to this realization. Goldman Sachs has released a projection. It expects businesses to jack up prices further and pass on 55% of the added cost. So groceries and other daily essentials would become even more expensive in the coming days. Even the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, has issued warnings. It held a press conference yesterday, and it said that Trump's tariff threats could trigger a spiral of escalation, one that may damage the global economy and spark a sharp sell-off in financial markets.
It's a little bit hard to speculate on this. I just want to say that increasing tariffs is something that will hurt both the country that is putting the tariffs on, as we've seen, as I've just described for the case of the US. Of course, it's also hurting other countries. So this is a situation where tariffs and retaliation and increasing tariffs would put downward pressure on global activity.
So experts throughout have been issuing these warnings that this would happen, and it's happening. But Trump, it seems, is living in an alternate reality where his tariffs are a huge success and he's doubling down on them. So the worst may be yet to come. Elon Musk has picked a new fight on X. He's locked in a public brawl with Ryanair. That's the biggest airline of Europe. Musk is going after Ryanair and its CEO, Michael O'Leary. Now, Ryanair, as you would know, is a budget airline. It flies more than 100 million passengers every year. Elon Musk wants these passengers to be able to use Starlink. That's his satellite internet service. Musk wants Ryanair to install Starlink on its planes. But Michael O'Leary shot down the idea publicly, and he called Musk an idiot. Sure enough, Musk fired back. He started a poll on X asking his followers if he should buy Ryanair. And if you think you've heard this before, you have. Only the last time it was not an airline company, it was an internet platform. It was called Twitter. Musk joked if he should buy Twitter. The joke turned into a serious takeover bid, and eventually Musk did buy it and renamed it X. So is Ryanair next? Will Elon Musk buy it? Our next report explores.
Elon Musk is picking a new fight. this time with the head of Europe's biggest budget airline, Michael O'Leary, the CEO of Ryanair, and the clash has gone public. It started with Wi-Fi. It escalated into insults. And now, Musk is asking if he should buy the airline. Yes, literally buy it. Yesterday, Musk posted a poll on X. He asked followers if he should purchase Ryanair and, in his words, restore Ryan as their rightful ruler. The jab was aimed at Michael O'Leary, a man who has led Ryanair for over 2 decades and turned it into one of Europe's largest airline groups. The fight began last week. O'Leary dismissed SpaceX's Starlink internet service. He said the rooftop antenna would add fuel costs because of weight and drag. Musk responded by calling O'Leary misinformed. O'Leary hit back. He called Musk an idiot. That is when the spat turned into a spectacle. Musk demanded that Ryanair fire O'Leary and asked how much it would cost to buy the airline. Ryanair responded with sarcasm, but its shares rose 2.3% today. The airline is now valued at $35 billion, nearly 3 times the size of Lufthansa, the region's largest airline group. O'Leary is also one of Ryanair's top 10 shareholders. He was recently awarded a major bonus for the stock's strong performance. Ryanair gained 55% last year, but this is not just about a CEO feud. Musk's own companies are under pressure. His AI chatbot, Grok, has been accused of enabling non-consensual image generation. Ireland, which hosts EU tech regulation, has vowed to act. And Ryanair is based in Ireland. That context matters. Because this is not Musk's first public poll, or his first impulse to buy a company. In 2017, he joked about buying Twitter after a casual exchange online. 5 years later, he actually did it. He bought the company for $44 billion, then fired most of its senior staff. Now he is using the same tactics with Ryanair: blunt criticism, social media polling, implied threats of takeover. It is classic Musk. But buying an airline is harder than tweeting about it. Regulatory hurdles are high. Most countries limit foreign ownership of major carriers. Even British Airways' parent company dropped a merger over competition concerns in 2024. And Ryanair is no soft target. It is profitable, it is expanding, and it is led by a CEO who thrives on confrontation. This feud may not lead to a buyout, but it highlights Musk's style of disruption. He does not just build companies, he provokes industries. And now, he has entered the airspace.
Let's turn to India now. This week started on a positive note for defense sales. India shipped its homegrown guided Pinaka rockets to a foreign country, that too for the first time ever. The rockets were made at a facility in Nagpur. They were flagged off by Defense Minister Rajnath Singh. Take a look. And where are they heading? To Armenia in the Caucasus. We'll explain the significance of this deal, but first let's look at the Pinaka. The Pinaka is a multi-barrel rocket system. It was developed by India's DRDO in the 19D lab. The first versions had a range of 37.5 kilometers. The newer ones can reach up to 75 kilometers. The latest version was trialed last month by the DRDO. It can strike up to 120 kilometers away. So this is a precise and lethal strike option, and that is why Armenia wants it. In 2022, they signed a $250 million deal with India. They wanted to buy 4 Pinaka batteries. Some of these were unguided rockets, meaning you just had to point and fire them. There are no onboard systems to control their trajectory. These unguided missiles were shipped by November 2024. And now the focus is on the guided versions. It's the first time India is selling these rockets abroad. And as the defense minister said, it's just the start.
हमारा लक्ष्य है कि भारत एमिनिशन प्रोडक्शन का ग्लोबल हब बने। और मित्रों, आपको देखने के बाद जो कुछ भी मैंने देखा है, मैं कह सकता हूं हम इस लक्ष्य को हासिल करके रहेंगे।
Now there's a reason why India is selling to Armenia. Armenia has a long-standing border dispute with its neighbor, that's Azerbaijan. Both countries also fought brief wars in 2020 and 2023. Now, Azerbaijan is a big supporter of Pakistan. They backed Pakistan against India during Operation Sindoor. So it's not just a bilateral military sale, it's very much a proxy battle in the Caucasus. Pakistan supporting and arming Azerbaijan, India supporting and arming Armenia. And the Pinaka is just one system. Armenia has also bought India's Akash air defenses. They signed a $720 million deal in 2024 for 15 systems. And remember, the Akash is battle-tested. India used this system to shoot down Pakistani drones and missiles. So reports say several countries are eyeing the Akash, like the Philippines, Brazil, Egypt, and Vietnam. Which brings us to the broader outlook. India's mission is to become a seller in the global arms market. And how close are we to that mission? Well, look at the numbers again. Our domestic defense output was worth 46,000 crores in 2014. That's around $5 billion. Today, it's 1.5 lakh crores, which is more than $16 billion. The exports have also zoomed from less than $100 million to $2 billion. So the overall picture is improving, and in that context, the Pinaka deal is very important. These rockets were manufactured at a private facility in Nagpur. It is operated by Solar Defense and Aerospace Limited, and that's the objective here, to allow the private sector to lead the defense push. Right now, public sector firms make up 77% of India's arms output, 77%. The key is to shift this burden to private firms as well. And this Pinaka deal is a step in that direction. Secondly, the nature of the weapon is also important. For years, India's defense exports were limited to small arms and spare parts, and those are important too. But if you want to be a big player, you must sell advanced weapons. Things like fighter jets, missiles, and air defenses. That's what you should be selling, because that's where the big money is. That's also where closer strategic partnerships lie. And India is finally doing that. In 2022, the Philippines bought the BrahMos missile from India. Reports say Indonesia is also close to a deal. And now Armenia is buying Pinaka rockets. These are lethal offensive weapons. They signal India's rise as a reliable supplier. As always, the key is to build on this. Some of India's defense problems are well known to the outside world. Things like delays and rising costs. We need to fight against such perceptions. We need to deliver on time and establish a cost advantage. Of course, such transitions never happen overnight, but the good news is it is happening.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Well, shifting focus to some breaking news that's coming in. The European Union Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is going to be in India next week for the Republic Day celebrations here. And ahead of that visit, she has gone on to say that the EU will strike mother of all deals with India next week. Also adding that Europe will always choose the world and the world is ready to choose Europe. Zaka Jacob, my colleague, now joins us, getting us more details on this. But before that, let's listen in to what Ursula von der Leyen had to say.
Of 2 billion people, accounting for almost a quarter of global GDP. And crucially, that would provide a first-mover advantage for Europe with one of the world's fastest-growing and most dynamic continents. Europe wants to do business with the growth centers of today and the economic powerhouses of this century, from Latin America to the Indo-Pacific and far beyond, Europe will always choose the world, and the world is ready to choose Europe.
Zaka now joins us, getting us more perspective on this. Zaka, as far as the mother of all deals is concerned, any insight into what's that going to look like?
So it's the India-EU FTA. They've been negotiating this for over 10 years now. It started in 2013, and then in 2022, they got suspended because clearly there were issues in the negotiations between India and the European Union. The sticking point still seems to be around the carbon-adjusted border mechanism, whereby if you are exporting to any country within the European Union, the 27-member bloc, you have to pay a sort of a tariff, if you will. Some are calling it a non-tariff barrier, whereby it sort of mitigates some of the carbon footprint, whether it is auto companies, whether it's other companies. But I think the larger context in which Ursula has made these comments are absolutely important, because it's happening in Davos. She's speaking, just a day before Donald Trump speaks there. She's also signaling to Trump at a time when relations between Brussels and Washington is deeply frayed because of the Greenland controversy. She's signaling to Trump that, look, we have other business partners equally big, in fact bigger than the United States in terms of a market, that we're willing to do business with, and they are willing to do business with us as well. For India too, this is important. The India-EU FTA simply...
Bangladesh is heading to the polls in a few weeks, and in the run-up to that, tensions with India are rising. The latest flashpoint is the Teesta River and the Chicken's Neck. It is one of India's most strategic and valued corridors. The Chicken's Neck connects India's northeast to the rest of the country, and it's back in focus because China is making moves near it. The Chinese ambassador to Bangladesh toured a project site close to the Teesta River. Dhaka gave him access to an area which is strategically important and sensitive for India. And not just access. One of Mohammad Yunus's advisors accompanied the Chinese envoy. New Delhi is yet to respond to this development, but there's no denying that this is a fresh provocation by Yunus's interim regime, and yet another challenge for India to handle. Here's a report.
There is a new flashpoint in the India-Bangladesh relationship. At the center of it is China and a narrow strip of land that India considers critical. It is called the Siliguri Corridor, a 22-kilometer passage that connects mainland India to its northeastern states. Strategists call it the Chicken's Neck. If cut off, 7 Indian states would be landlocked. Now China has stepped close to that neck, and Bangladesh helped them get there. This week, the Chinese ambassador to Bangladesh visited a key river project. It is located near the Siliguri corridor. He was joined by a top Bangladeshi official, Saida Rizwana Hassan, an advisor to the Ministry of Information, Environment and Water Resources. She told reporters that both China and Bangladesh are committed to starting the Teesta project. The only delay, she said, is in project verification. But the intent is clear. Beijing is ready to begin work, and Dhaka is holding the door open. Why does this matter? Because the Teesta River is at the center of a long-standing issue between India and Bangladesh. It runs through both countries. For Bangladesh's north, it is a lifeline for farms and livelihoods. For West Bengal, it is no less important. That is why a water-sharing deal has dragged on for decades. But no final agreement has been reached. Now China is entering the equation, not as a neutral player, but as a possible investor and stakeholder. Over the weekend, the Chinese ambassador had held a meeting in Dhaka. He sat down with the current National Security Advisor of Bangladesh. Once again, Teesta River Management Project was on the agenda. The talks were described as cordial, but for India it is yet another warning sign. Since last year, Mohammad Yunus has been provoking India on the issue. In 2025, Yunus had given a controversial statement. He had called Bangladesh the only guardian of the ocean for northeast India. Yunus pitched greater involvement of the Chinese in the region. Once again, the reference was aimed at the chicken's neck. The Siliguri Corridor, or Chicken's Neck, is India's only land link to the east. Losing control over that passage would be a strategic nightmare. That is why New Delhi invested heavily in its partnership with Dhaka, especially under former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. But after her exit, the equation has shifted. With just days to go for the election in Bangladesh, Yunus is stirring up the pot again. The polls could bring an end to his interim regime. But for the moment, New Delhi's patience is being put to the test.
It is freezing in the U.S. state of Minnesota. The streets of Minneapolis are covered in snow, yet U.S. federal agents are storming homes and arresting people in barely any clothes. If this was any other country, the U.S. would condemn, issue statements and threaten to invade. But this is the American heartland. ICE is flooding the state. ICE stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. They're cracking down on immigrants in the US. And as we speak, the state of Minnesota is ground zero. Our next report tells you more.
It was supposed to be a Sunday service. But inside a church in St. Paul, Minnesota, the calm didn't last.
This is the house of God.
Protesters believed one of the pastors at this church also worked for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. This is the same agency now flooding Minnesota with agents and leading the immigration crackdown. That pastor wasn't leading the service that day, but to protesters, the symbolism was too strong to ignore. They walked in, chanted slogans, and walked out. And in that moment, a church became the front line of America's immigration war. Within hours, the response from Washington was thunderous. The Justice Department announced an investigation. Top officials accused protesters of desecrating a house of worship. And then Donald Trump weighed in. In the early hours of the morning, Trump went online. He called them agitators and insurrectionists. He warned they should be jailed or thrown out of the country. This comes as Minnesota was already boiling. For weeks, ICE had been flooding into the state, with thousands of agents with unmarked vehicles. They are knocking on doors and arresting people from their homes.
Yeah, they just took me out there with no clothes on, and they just covered with my grandson's blankets. Yeah, they just took me out there. And I was like, man, this is embarrassing.
And all of it traces back to one moment: the killing of Renee Good. The 37-year-old mother of three had stopped her car as ICE vehicles moved through her neighborhood. Minutes later, an ICE agent fired multiple shots. Renee Good was dead.
What did you do?
And that moment changed Minnesota. The Trump administration says Renee Good tried to harm agents with her vehicle. Minnesota's leaders say the shooting was reckless, avoidable, and predictable. The FBI briefly opened a civil rights probe. There was no federal investigation into the killing itself. That decision poured gasoline on an already raging fire. Soon, the streets filled again. There were protests across the city. Minnesota's leaders did what they could. They sued, calling the ICE surge unconstitutional. For now, the Pentagon has quietly put 1,500 active duty soldiers on standby. Minnesota's governor activated the National Guard too, officially to support local police, not ICE. But the message is clear. This could escalate. Meanwhile, life in Minneapolis has changed. Schools have closed. Immigrant-owned businesses are shuttered. Parents avoid grocery runs. Neighbors organize patrols. People share ICE sightings in encrypted group chats.
Just driving around my neighborhood, kind of picking an area to just keep an eye on, looking out for any ICE or Customs and Border Patrol vehicles that might be passing through the neighborhood, or any ICE agents or Border Patrol agents that are getting out of their cars.
So what is this really about? Yes, immigration. Yes, protests. Yes, law and order. But underneath it all is a deeper fight. Can a state say no to a president? Can communities resist federal power? And how far is Trump willing to go to prove that resistance comes at a cost? Minnesota may be the test case, but it won't be the last.
There was a time when smoking was just another pastime. Doctors smoked, athletes smoked, tobacco companies were top advertisers, and airplanes had separate smoking areas. Yes, you could smoke on a flight. And if you did not smoke, well, you were the odd one out. Then the science caught up. Cancer statistics piled up, public health campaigns changed the narrative, and slowly cigarettes went from cool to cancerous. Now, is alcohol going the same way? I ask because look at alcohol sales globally. They're dipping every year. In 2025, sales dipped by 1% across the world, and wine was the hardest hit at 2.4%. Global wine consumption has fallen to its lowest level since 1961. Even the sales of spirits are slowing, and these may look like small figures, but do remember that alcohol was once considered recession-proof. It's an industry that kept growing for decades, and now it is slowing down. And the reason for that could be Gen Z. They're not drinking as much. On an average, Gen Z drinks 20% less than millennials. And many Gen Zers are abstaining from booze altogether for multiple reasons. One of them is more awareness. That's one of the reasons. The WHO says no amount of alcohol is good for your body. No amount, not even that one glass of wine. For all its PR, wine has lost the plot. Then the nature of socializing is changing. You see, social gatherings used to be associated with alcohol. You get together, you drink, you spend the rest of the next day recovering. Well, not anymore. More and more people are prioritizing health over temporary indulgence. From reducing their calorie intake to avoiding the dreaded hangover, it is rooted in the desire for a healthier lifestyle. Another reason for less drinking is the rise of other options, like non-alcoholic beverages. In 2020, the global non-alcoholic beverages market was worth $923 million. By 2028, it could be worth over $1.7 trillion. Non-alcoholic beer is on track to become the world's second largest beer category. That's non-alcoholic beer. The other option is marijuana. The drug is legal in nearly half of all US states for recreational use, and this has led to a shift in consumption patterns. Reason 4 is inflation and social media. Everything is more expensive, from rent to food items, so Gen Z is ditching the pricey cocktails. And reason 5, less socializing. The world over, people are hanging out lesser than ever. Take these numbers from the United States. In the year 2003, people spent almost 30 hours a month with their friends, 30 hours a month. In 2019, that number went down to 10 hours. And less socializing meant lesser drinking. Of course, this is not good news for the alcohol industry. They're not denying the trend, they're adapting to it. They're coming up with zero alcohol beers, alcohol-free spirits, and even large mocktail menus at bars. Sober curious is now a market category. It means you're curious to see what sober life is. The trend is catching on. But is it here to stay? Will alcohol become the new cigarette? Well, the popular answer is no. Some analysts say every generation drinks more as it gets older, so Gen Z could be the same. They may not be drinking now, but the trend could reverse later. Second, alcohol still claims cultural space. It is tied to celebrations, to weddings, festivals, even religion, and even rituals that go back centuries. Cigarettes never had that kind of emotional real estate. So no, alcohol may not become the next cigarette, but it is becoming something else. A generation ago, drinking was the cool thing. It was a rite of passage and social currency. But with Gen Z, that's changing, and that might be the most radical shifts of all. The world order is collapsing in front of our eyes, but guess what the internet is talking about? The Beckham family drama. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. David and Victoria Beckham are facing attacks from their eldest child. That's their son, Brooklyn Beckham. He claims his parents tried to ruin his marriage. He also says he does not want to reconcile with them. This episode has set social media on fire, but we have the perfect solution. Call Donald Trump. The man claims to have ended 8 wars. Let him end this family drama and earn that borrowed Nobel medal.
Hello and welcome to the late night edition with me, Ayushman Singh John. Well, big breaking news coming in from the top of the bulletin when it comes to the fallout